Hi everybody, I am Bob Goosmann and this is my real estate partner Davey. We are the co-owners of Davey Goosmann Realty, and each and every week we'll try to cover some type of a subject that has to do with real estate, agents, contracts, just really whatever. And as always, when you're watching these and if you come up with an idea, feel free to send a question to us, whether you like the videos, whether you don't like my hair, anything that comes up, you just send it right along. Today we are going to talk about net sheets, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah.
Which may seem like a simple thing.
Yeah.
It is a simple thing, but I'll tell you a couple of stories. When I first got into the business, this is one of the things I was taught. It's a seller's estimated net sheet. And what this does for the seller is once you put a sales price on the house and you pull out all the closing costs, the seller has an approximate idea of what they may walk away with. The thing that interested me as the years went by and I was in different real estate offices, people were not familiar with net sheets, and I was very confused by that because I think it's a very, very important document. The net sheet, one of the first things that happened to me, I remember early on, I was working with the buyer, and the seller came out of the closing office in tears. And of course, I didn't know what had happened, and it wasn't my client. The client was my buyer. It turned out that the agent had not told them that the taxes would come out. So they were planning on one number, and the number was significantly less.
Big surprise.
Big surprise. And that kind of stuck in my mind, like, I don't want that to ever happen to me. So it's just a matter of putting everything together when you take in your listing presentation.
Yeah.
And have a net sheet so you can give them some estimates. And they are estimates. But what a net sheet does, first of all, it's going to give you a date to close. And that close is going to identify the time of year so it'll know how to calculate the taxes.
And a lot of, I mean, the great thing about today is almost every title company now has their own app and they have net sheets built in, and really all you have to do is plug in your numbers. But it is important that you make sure you don't miss one of the items.
Right, right. And there's different ways to sell. When I first started, I think we had 4 ways to finance a house. Now we've got 6. And it is important because different types of loans require different prices. So those things are important. It identifies your attorney's fees, your broker fees, if there's transfer fees from a condo, HOA, all of that, courier fees, and then there's escrow fees, and those are identified by the title company. So you can either estimate or ask your title company what that is. And then you go into prorations. And those taxes, everybody is a little confused about prorations. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, well, do I pay the taxes? Do they pay the taxes? But the people who live in the house pay the taxes up until the time they close the house. Then the taxes belong to the new buyer. Now, what's confusing about that, Bob?
What's confusing about it, a lot of times people are like, well, when are the taxes paid? So who's going to be, is it going to be on the buyer's side? Is it going to be on the seller's side? Does that mean, am I paying or am I getting money back at the end of the year? You know what I mean?
Right. What it means is the buyer ends up paying the entire year of taxes, but the seller has given them credit for that.
There will be a credit towards the buyer on closing day, but the buyer's got to remember at the end of the year, they're the ones paying for the whole year.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the seller does in fact get their escrow return.
Yes, correct. Correct.
So it's kind of a win-win for everybody. The one thing that throws a lot of people off is if it's a new build. And agents, I know they know by now, have to be very, very careful about what the real taxes are gonna be.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, a lender may use unimproved property taxes in order to get a payment to qualify. Now, I don't mean to put slurs on anybody, but if they tell the buyer what they're doing, that's fine. But if they don't, the first year, those taxes are gonna come out as improved property, gonna blow everything.
You could have a $500,000 house that you just purchased, and that first year of taxes might only be $60,000 because that was the unimproved land value. That was the tax determination on that. Then the next year, all of a sudden, you get a little surprise.
Yeah, the big house payment. So when you put in all of these designations that they have, the service contract, if there's FHA, if there's VA allowables, you put it in there, the survey fee, if the seller happens to have to pay for the survey, and the title policy, which is typically picked up by the seller. And that can be a real surprise to the seller too, because that's a pretty hefty amount. And any other fees that you have to throw in there. Then you get the estimated proceeds to a seller. Like you put the sales price, estimated closing cost, which you have, and then estimated loan payoff. Well, the seller may not always have the payoff. They may not know what it is.
Right.
So an easy rule of thumb is just to do the sales price, do the estimated closing cost, and then get that number and tell them to subtract what they owe from that number.
That's what they'll take away.
That's what,
Well,
yeah.
approximate on these
Approximate,
things.
yeah.
You'll get your closing statement before closing, and then you'll know the exact.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reason this is so important, the reason we want you to kind of give it a second thought before you go to closing, is when you get to that closing table, if you've given your seller this document and you check the closing statement and it's significantly different, either plus or minus, you need to see what you missed or what you added.
Yes.
So that when you do sit down to the closing table, you can say, Mr. Seller, here's the net sheet we worked on. However, your payoff was a little bit more than what you thought. That way nobody's upset. So keep that in mind. I hope if you have any questions, you'll give us a call. I know this seems really simple, but some of the most simple things can be the most drastic issues and the most embarrassing.
Most important thing is you don't want surprises at the closing
At closing.
table. Thank you all for watching, and we'll be back next week with another topic. Thanks.
Bye.